Welcome back to the second part, or part two, of this week's episode. And what we're going to talk about now is we're going to address a little bit more of our road time. The last 3 weeks or so have been kind of a whirlwind for the Student of the Gun crew. Before we went up to Ohio and before we went to Baton Rouge, we were actually out in Wyoming, just outside of a place called Encampment, Wyoming. Now, Jared didn't get to make that trip, did you, Jared?
No, sadly, I didn't.
Jared had other commitments, and he wasn't able to make the trip. So son number 2, Zachary, who is an aspiring videographer, he made the trip with me, and we went out to Encampment, Wyoming, to a fantastic place called the Silver Spur Ranch. Now, this was a planned event. It was a planned event that was hosted by our good friends at Smith & Wesson and Thompson Center, and it was supported by Hornady and Weaver and Champion. We went out there, and our primary goal was to shoot gophers and prairie dogs. And let me tell you what, before I had ever shot prairie dogs, a friend of mine told me, he said, dude, it's the most fun that you can have with your clothes on. And having done it several times now, I can tell you that his description was very, very close to being right on the mark, if not exactly on the mark. If you've not shot prairie dogs, you don't know. You just need to get out there and do it. Now, some of you guys out east, the eastern folks shoot groundhogs, and you know what groundhogs are all about. They're, groundhogs are pretty serious critters. They're marmots, and they can get 5, 6, 7, 8. I've shot groundhogs all the way up to 12, 13 pounds. They can get pretty big. That's like, 13-pound groundhogs. That's like a small dog. Now, prairie dogs are a different story altogether. A 2 or 3 pound prairie dog is big. That's a big prairie dog. Most of the time, they're about 1, maybe 2 pounds max. And Jared was talking about it, had his other job about how we were going to go out and hunt prairie dogs. And what did one of the women at your work say, Jared?
Why you want to shoot those?
No, not those, she said.
Oh, dogs.
Yeah, she said, why would you want to shoot dogs? Think of it like this. Think of them as short-tailed desert rats. Think of them as varmints that live out in the desert or out west. Now, you Western guys, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And prairie dogs can be very destructive. You get a colony of prairie dogs that will burrow underneath a building, and the buildings will literally collapse. They were having problems in Colorado with that because if you know anything about modern Colorado has become the place that hippies go when they figure that California is not liberal enough for them. If you know anything about Colorado. So they're having problems because they made it illegal in certain areas to kill the prairie dogs, the poor little rats. And instead, they were protected and they couldn't shoot them. So they're burrowing underneath housing developments and schools and what have you, and causing the foundations to collapse. But that's okay as long as the rats get to live. But as far as farmers or ranchers are concerned, what you'll get prairie dogs. They'll burrow, and a $3,000-$4,000 piece of cattle there, a walking steak will step into one of these holes and break its leg, and that's bad juju. So what these folks will let you do is you'll come out there and they basically set up prairie dog safaris or excursions. Now, our buddies at Smith & Wesson, they wanted us to test out a bunch of their different products, but the ones that we worked with the most were their M&P 15 rifles. Now, you guys, if you know anything about modern Smith & Wesson or what's been going on in the last few years with them, they've expanded their line tremendously, and the M&P lineup is probably the most popular lineup right now in the Smith & Wesson catalog, and they have rifles and pistols. And the M&P rifles are essentially a stoner-type rifle, and they had performance center models and they had tactical models. Now, the performance center models obviously are designed for precision shooting, and the tactical ones are a little bit more robust. But let me tell you what, both the tactical model and the performance center model of the M&P 15 rifles, we were out there and we were busting prairie dogs and gophers. Now, Thompson Center is kind of a well, they're not a cousin or a partner, but the same parent company that owns Smith & Wesson also owns Thompson Center now. And Thompson Center, in addition to their Contender pistols, which everybody knows about, and their black powder rifles, they also make a line of bolt-action rifles called the Venture line. And in the Venture line, they have what they call a Predator rifle. And the Predator rifle is a bolt-action rifle. And the ones we had out there in Wyoming were chambered in 204 Ruger and 22 250. Now, those of you who are hip to rifle calibers, you know that the 204 Ruger's been out for, I'm guessing around maybe not 10 years, but close to it by now. And the 204 Ruger is essentially a 222 Remington necked down to 20 caliber. And they use very light bullets. They use bullets in the 32 to 40 caliber range. And brothers and sisters, let me tell you what, you take a 32 grain bullet in that and you shoot it out of a Venture rifle. And I believe the ammunition we were shooting from Hornady, it was 32 grain. And the recorded factory velocity on these from the muzzle was right around just shy of 4,100 feet per second. That's right. You heard that correct. 4,100 feet per second. For those of you that are a little bit ballistically challenged, let me tell you what, that is fast. That is cooking. Jared, I think if they make it go any faster, will it go back in time?
It might. Back to, what, 1980? What'd they go back to?
1985?
Yeah, 1985.
With Marty McFly. But, yeah, that round is smoking. And the fantastic thing about that for varmint hunting, prairie dog hunting, shooting, little pest type animals is you don't need big heavy bullets like you're shooting an elk or something like that. All you need is a fast bullet and a light bullet. And when they push it out that fast, your elevation change from, 50, 100, 200, 300, there is a little bit of a drop, but the drop on a target like a prairie dog is nil. It's minimum. It's you really don't even consider it. As a matter of fact, I was out on the first day and I had one of the TC Venture rifles, the Predators, and there was a prairie dog somewhere pushing 300 or so yards away. And like I normally would, I thought, well, okay, the rifle zeroed for 100. I need to hold right over the top of the head and the bullet will drop in, bam, and it'll hit it. Well, I missed it. And my partner said, what'd you do? I said, well, I held over. He goes, dude, no. Don't, with this one, don't hold over. Hold right on. He goes, you're talking maybe an inch or two drop. And that's exactly what I did. So from that point forward, everything within 100 yards was point of aim, point of impact. It was just phenomenal. And let me tell you what, it does a good job. That projectile does a really good job on prairie dogs. Now, the 22-250, for you rifle aficionados, you'll know that cartridge. And if you really want to stretch a shot out, the 22-250 is what you're looking for. We were stretching shots out with that one. And I was very impressed by both the Smith & Wesson and the Thompson Center rifles. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. They had different, Weaver sent several different scopes to be mounted on the rifle so that we could try them out. And for you guys who haven't looked at Weaver lately, or those of you who've been in the game a long time, you know that Weaver historically was a very well-respected name. And then, around the 80s, 90s time frame, when the whole let's build stuff in China started, they kind of took a black eye, and Weaver was actually, it went out of business and was sold. Well, ATK, the same company that owns Federal Ammunition and Champion Products and so forth and Black Hawk, well, ATK bought Weaver. And they started putting some R&D, because I talked to some of the guys at Weaver, and they said, for 10, 15 years, there was nothing going on with Weaver. It was just the same products. It was the same products over and over again. And over the last couple of years, what they've done is they put a lot of R&D back into the product. So if you haven't looked at a Weaver catalog lately, if you haven't gone over to their website, especially if you haven't looked at them in the last year or two, it'll be worth your while to check them out to see what new things that they have going. And as far as hearing protection, we use the Champion electronic earmuffs. And that's really what you need to have when you're out there doing something like that, because you want to be able to hear your spotter or your partner who's watching your shots. And the great thing about the 204 Ruger is that the recoil is so light that you can spot your hits through your scope easily. It hardly comes off target when you break the shot, so it's easy to see the impact through your scope. But if you're using a little heavier recoiling rifle, it's always good to have a spotter, somebody watching, especially if you're shooting long distances, to let you know where your shots went. And we use the Champion earmuffs so we could hear each other and hear our guide. Now, when you go to a place like the Spur Ranch, they're going to hook you up with a professional guide. They have professional hunting guides out there, and they don't just do prairie dogs and gophers. They do antelope and elk and predators like coyote and what have you. And if they have them, the mule deer herd out there, they told me that it's been really scarce. The numbers are way down. But professional hunting guides, you want to listen to these guys. They spend their whole lives. It's their job to take people out hunting. They know the area, listen to them. And if you have electronic, hearing protection on, you can actually hear what they're telling you. So that's always a good thing. Now, a lot of guys have said to me, they said, well, dude, isn't it just, it's not hunting, it's just shooting. All you're doing is shooting. And depending on where you are, I know that in the United States, there are places where they have what they call dog towns. And it's just a hillside with hundreds of holes dug into it. And in those hundreds of holes are thousands of prairie dogs. And they just keep popping out all day long. So you can set up, you put a table or a truck bench or what have you, set it up, and you can just sit there, for an hour or more and not even have to move. And you're just going to keep shooting and shooting and shooting. I know that there are places in America that you can do that. Now, where we were on the Spur Ranch, that really wasn't the case. They didn't have 100 dog towns. And what they were is they were spread out all over the place. And so you would go you'd drive into a setup and you might see one or two or three, and then you drive a little bit more and see another, two or three and so forth. And we were kind of moving around all day long. But out there, the sagebrush and the prairie grass, those things can hide pretty well. And and I tell you what, Roger, the guide I was with, this guy's got an eagle eyes. He was spotting stuff. He was spotting, dogs 200, 300, 400 yards away and talking me onto him. Like, dude, where is that? And I was like, there it is. And when I said something about how the traditionalist hunters will poo-poo you, or they'll give you the prairie dog, that's not hunting, that's just shooting. Okay. And he goes, yeah, that may be the case in some places, but out here, you're hunting for them. You're trying to find them. You have to use your eyes to locate them. And it's a lot harder to find a prairie dog 300 yards away than it is an antelope. They're a lot smaller, or a deer or what have you. But, folks have said, well, all right, I've never hunted prairie dogs. I hunt whitetail in the East, or, what have you. Why would I want to do that? What's the point? You're not going to eat it. That's another thing that folks will say. Wow, if you're not going to eat what you kill, you shouldn't kill it. Dude, do you kill mice in your house? You're not going to eat a mouse, are you? If there were rats behind under your deck, would you kill the rats and eat them, or would you just kill them because they're varmints, because they're pest animals? Well, that's what prairie dogs are. They're pest animals. And out east, where you have your marmots, you have your groundhogs and what have you. If you've got a friend that owns a dairy farm and he's got marmots on it, he wants those things gone. Again, a Holstein steps in one of those groundhog holes, breaks his leg. It's a bad day for the farmer. So they're pests, and we're not going to run out of them. I guarantee you that there is very slim chance of us running out of prairie dogs anytime in the near future. That's like saying we can't kill the mice because we're going to run out and they're endangered. Not going to happen. So why would you want to kill them? Number one, you go out there and you shoot these things because they need to be shot. You need to cull the herd, so to speak. Number two, think about it like this. If you were, let's say you're going to hunt antelope or whitetail or mule deer or elk or sheep or whatever, and you've got your tag, you may go out and literally spend 3, 4 days, 5 days, and shoot one round. You might track or stalk an animal for 2 days and get one single shot in that entire time. It's a pretty important shot, don't you think? Well, obviously. What if you had spent the previous season or a month or two earlier and gone out to the field and shot hundreds of shots, fired hundreds of rounds in practice, in anticipation, in preparation for that once-in-a-lifetime elk hunt or that once-in-a-lifetime bighorn sheep hunt or what have you? If you miss a prairie dog, it's not that big of a deal. Just reload, get back on target, and do it again. It's no big deal. If you miss that one shot at a trophy elk or a trophy antelope, he's going to be gone, and you probably won't get another shot. The great thing about hunting prairie dogs is you get to get out in the field, the real field. How many folks do you know that are friends of yours or acquaintances, or you might be one of them, that their entire training for a big game hunt is to go to the range, sit down at the bench, put their rifle in a rifle rest, fire 3 shots at 100 yards onto a piece of paper. All the shots are within 3 inches of each other. They call it good. They pack up their stuff, and they're gone. That is not preparation for a hunt. That is preparation to press the trigger and shoot the gun. That's all that is. Don't fool yourself. If you're sitting at a bench with a rifle in a rest and you slowly and methodically press the trigger, all you're doing is making the gun go bang, and you're checking the zero on your scope. You're not preparing for a hunt. The great thing about prairie dog hunting is you get out into the actual field. That's right. You get out and you walk and you kneel and you lay on the ground. You throw down a pack and you rest your rifle on it, or you use shooting sticks or what have you. And you find out what works and what doesn't. If you're out prairie dog hunting and you find out that the new boots that you just bought are completely uncomfortable and they're killing your feet, it's not that big of a deal. You can just stop hunting or stop walking around. It's no big deal. If you go out on a once-in-a-lifetime antelope hunt and you find out halfway through the first day that the boots are killing your feet, what are you going to do? Quit? Go home? This is your opportunity. You don't have another opportunity. It's now. So, or a pack. Let's say you bought a pack. You thought it was a good pack. You get out in the field, you find out that it's killing your back because it won't ride right, or the straps are poorly made, or what have you. Or maybe it's a good pack, but it just doesn't fit your body. Going out and shooting prairie dogs or marmots or varmints or whatever is a fantastic opportunity for you to check your gear. Make sure that the gear you have works for you, whether it's packs or boots or field clothing or what have you. How about optics? When's the last time you checked the optics on your rifle? When's the last time you practiced shooting from awkward positions? Like we said, sitting at a table at your favorite gun club, sitting down at the bench, getting all comfortable, that's a far cry from laying on the side of a hill in some strange, awkward position and trying to get a shot off at an animal that's 157 yards away. Big darn difference. How many times have you gotten up off of the bench and tried to fire a shot from the offhand or standing, or then drop down to a hasty kneeling position and try to get a shot from there? These are all things that you can practice and you can do out in the field. When you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of prairie dogs, if you're, practicing your kneeling position or you're sitting or what have you, and you miss, guess what? It's no big deal. Do it again until you get it right. You can't do that with whitetail or elk or antelope or what have you, because you might get one shot, you miss, and if anybody who's ever gone after antelope knows they don't hang around to let you fire a second shot. You just get to watch them run over the next hill. That's what you get to do. So get out there, and and not only are you testing out your gear, which is an important thing to do. If you're going to go to the field, you want to know that all your gear is good gear, that it's solid gear, your packs and what have you. Not only are you doing that, but you're testing, guess what? Your own skill. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not lie to ourselves. Is your skill up to par? Could it use a little bit of work? Could you use some practice out in the field? Have you ever tried to estimate range? Estimate wind? Have you ever had to read the wind? Have you ever worked with another shooter who laid down next to you and said, okay, this is what the wind is doing, this is what you should do? if you're out in the prairie dog fields, that's an excellent opportunity to learn to do all those things. And you can fire 100, 200, 300 shots over a couple of days. That's a lot of trigger time. That's a lot of practice. And guess what? You'll be a lot better if you're dedicated, and if you get out there and pay attention, you're going to be a lot better off at the end of it than you were at the beginning, just because you had the experience. And that experience is something that you can't buy. You just can't go to the store and buy experience. Now, what else can we do? Well, what we can do besides all that good stuff is it's fun. It just is. Sometimes it's fun to get out and shoot stuff. And prairie dog hunting is one of those opportunities. Now, when I was out there, I've been on several guided hunts. Not a tremendous amount, but, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've been in Texas, I've been in Wyoming, and I've been out with professional hunting guides, folks who make their living taking dudes out, or, women too, chicks. If you're a chick out there, more power to you. Get out in the field. But these people take folks out to the field for a living. It's what they do. And I've had the opportunity, if you've ever done this, if you've ever gone hunting, you've ever gone out on an excursion, you know that you spend a lot more time riding, driving, walking, sitting than you do pressing the trigger on your rifle. So you get the opportunity to talk. And I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of professional hunting guides and outfitters over the years, and what I found is a lot of them have the exact same complaints about clients or words of wisdom or advice. And so this last time when I was out, I sat down with Roger, our hunting guy. We were driving around in the range truck, and we were getting from point A to point B, because the Silver Spur Ranch is a big ranch. I believe it's pushing 70,000 acres. So you can do a lot of driving on that ranch before you leave the property. And I asked him, I said, hey, and what if you had the audience, if the audience was in front of you, a bunch of, hundreds of prospective clients, hunters, people that wanted to book hunts, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them? And he gave me a lot of advice. And what I wanted to do is just take a moment to kind of, pass it along to you guys. Because essentially what you're looking at is, how can you've booked a hunt, whether it's to Alaska or Texas or Wyoming or Arizona or wherever it's to, but you've taken the time and you've paid for the hunt. You've reserved your spot, and now you're preparing to go. You've got the time blocked off on your calendar. You've cashed in some vacation days. You've booked your flight or what have you. And so you're ready. You're getting ready to go. It's coming up here in the next month or 2 or 3. How can you make the absolute most of your time out in the field? Because let's face it, you're only going to have a few days. A 5-day hunt, unless you're going to Africa, a 5-day hunt is a pretty long hunt. Most of the time, it's 2 or 3 days. 5 days is, if you're going to go all the way up to Alaska or something like that, you want to do 5 days or a week. But if you're just going to fly into Wyoming, you're going to fly down to Texas, something like that, you might only do 3, 4, 5 days. So how do we get the absolute most out of our time? How do we get ready for hunt camp? Well, number one, one thing my guide said, he says, know your gear. Know your gun, know your optic, know your ammo. And he said, you would be amazed at how many people show up here for an antelope hunt. And I ask them, where's your gun shoot? And they say, I don't know. I'm not sure. And he goes, when I hear that, I think, wow, it's going to be a long few days. And this guy said, well, one guy said, I don't know, I've never shot this gun. I borrowed it from my brother-in-law. And you know what? That's fine. If you don't have a big game rifle, and let's say you win a hunt at the Elk Lodge, what have you, raffle, and you get this antelope hunt, and you that's fine. Borrow a rifle from your brother-in-law. But before you get on the plane and fly out to Wyoming or Arizona or New Mexico, you might want to actually go to the range and press the trigger on it. Know where it's sighted in. Know if it's sighted in at 100, if it's sighted in at 200. Is it sighted in so that the bullet impacts 2 inches high at 100 yards? You need to know these things. You need to know how to be able to work the action, how to take off the manual safety, how to load and unload it safely without putting bullets where they're not supposed to be. These are kind of important things. And folks say, well, I know they said on their website that they have a range there at the ranch, at the outfitter when I get there. Well, yeah, they do. Most of your major outfitters, all of the major outfitters that I know of, they have what they call a zero range. So when you get there, they take you out to the zero range. You take whatever rifle you're going to be using to hunt. You get down and you check it. But they don't have time to teach you how to use your rifle. They don't have time for you to teach yourself how to use the rifle. The purpose of the zero range is to make sure that your optic didn't get screwed up during transport. That is the entire purpose of the zero range. All they want to do is they want to make sure that when you pull that rifle out of the case, especially if you had to fly, that it's still dialed in. It's still going to impact where it's supposed to impact. I've had guys tell me, they're like, man, I get a guy and we take him to the zero range. I don't even know what to tell him because he can't get a group smaller than 6 inches at 100 yards. And I'm like, I don't know if his scope is on or off or what the deal is. They don't have time to teach you how to shoot. You need to know how to do it before you show up. The zero range is just to check and make sure that your equipment is functioning the way it's supposed to. And if you're on, let's say, a 2 or a 3 day hunt, you might fly in, the outfitter picks you up, drives you out to the ranch, and they may expect you to be in the field that day. So you need to be ready to go when your boots hit the ground. Now, ammunition, this is another one, Roger. See, I asked the guy, he brought a 270 Winchester bolt-action rifle. Good rifle for shooting antelope or, most all North American game. And he said, well, what ammo do you have? And he's like, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. He said, well, what do you mean you're not sure? So he had the guy open his ammo box, and he said he had a mix match of all different types of 270. Folks, ammunition comes in all varieties and shapes and forms and sizes. And even if it's the same caliber, you could have 130 grain bullets, 150 grain bullets. You could have plastic tip bullets. You can have lead tip bullets. You can have round nose bullets, full metal jacket bullets, and they all perform differently. Now, they perform similarly, but differently. There's a big difference in point of impact from, let's say, a 155 grain bullet and a 175 grain bullet fired from a 30 caliber rifle. If you're shooting at an antelope that's 274 yards away and you've got a 2, 3, 4 inch variance in your point of impact from ammunition, that could be the difference between a hit and a miss. You don't want to take that chance. You need to know what ammunition. And a lot of bullets perform differently on different animals. And your guide will tell you, like, for instance, varmint bullets. Varmint bullets are designed to be super light, and they're designed to come apart almost immediately because you're shooting little animals. You're shooting small animals. You don't need deep penetration on a groundhog or a prairie dog or what have you. All you need is for it to go in and have that bullet, bam, come apart. But if you're shooting an elk, if you're shooting a black bear or a brown bear, there's a big darn difference. You need that bullet to go all the way in and do its job. So know what you're bringing with you. Know your ammunition. And guys, don't get fancy and don't get creative. A lot of guys will say, well, normally I shoot this ammo, but for this excursion, I'm going to change it out and I'm going to do this one. Well, they'll buy another box and they'll think, oh, it's good to go. It's zero the same. Brothers and sisters, I'm telling you, it's not. Check your ammo, know exactly where that specific ammunition that you're holding in your hand, know where it where it impacts from that rifle. So check your stuff, know your gear before you get out there. Now, as far as preparing yourself, he said, what I would do, especially if you're going to be in higher elevations. A lot of you guys might live on the East Coast. You live at relatively low elevations. You book a hunt in Wyoming. You might be hunting at 5,000 feet, 6,000, 7,000. If you're hunting elk, big game sheep, whatever, you could be hunting at 8,000 or 9,000 feet. And if you live in Pennsylvania or South Carolina or basically at sea level like we do down here, there's a big difference in living at sea level and going up and hunting at 7,000 feet. Folks, your body will know it. Get yourself out and walk. Move around. What I would do, and this is what we did, Zachary and I, this is what we did before we went out to Wyoming. We put on the boots that we were planning on using, and we went down and we walked several miles, 2, 3, 4 miles with those boots on, the exact same ones that you're going to take with you. If you can't walk 2 or 3 miles at home on flat ground without your feet hurting in those boots, there's no way you're going to survive walking up and down the hills or mountains out west. It's not going to happen. So check your boots, make sure that they fit you well and that they're comfortable. Stretch out your legs. If you're a desk jockey, let's face it, in the United States of America today, 2013, more people are desk jockeys than aren't. That's just the way it is. You're listening to this show on some kind of electronic mobile device, right? A lot of people are desk jockeys. They don't get out and get a lot of exercise or a lot of walking. Get yourself out, do some exercise, do some walking, stretch yourself. And I've got it in bold here on my show notes because this is one thing that the guy said. He goes, they got to hydrate. Drink water. And you can't wait until you get there to start doing it. You have to make sure that your body is properly hydrated before you get there because it takes it a while. It takes your body a while to get properly hydrated if you're not already. And what are certain things that can make you not properly hydrated? Well, smoking, alcohol, things like that. And hey, you're big boys and big girls. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but what I'm going to tell you as a person who's been all over the world and had to adjust to different climates, whether it's jungle climate, desert climate, mountain climate, the best way to help your body adjust is to provide your body with copious amounts of water. Just good old water. And now, but you got to make sure you eat too. Don't let your potassium and your sodium and all that don't let that get too low. But hydrate yourself. And here's a big one. Here's another big one that the guide said, and this goes beyond equipment, and it goes beyond your body. It goes beyond all that, and it's preparing your mind. And when we say preparing your mind, basically what my outfitter, what he was talking to me about out there, and my guy too, he goes, we get guys that'll book these hunts, they'll come out, he said, but their head is not in the game. He said their head is everywhere else. They're thinking about 100 different things, and they can't focus. And I'll give you a great example. He said, we'll be out driving around in the truck where we leave the ranch, we're heading out to where we're going to hunt, and they're sitting in the back texting. They got their phones out. They got their tablets out. They're working on this or they're working on that. And he said, they're not focused. If you cannot focus yourself on the hunt, you're not going to enjoy it. Guys, you spent the money. You booked the time. You're going out on a hunt. If your office can't live without you for 48 hours, number one, you got a problem. Take care of your business before you go on the hunt. If you only have 5 days, focus on what you've got to do. And he said that's the biggest thing with a lot of these guys is they come out there, and rather than focusing on what the guide is telling them they need to do, focusing on the hunt, focusing on getting prepared to go out, what they're doing is they're fiddle farting around on their Blackberries or their iPhones or their whatever. And he said it drives us crazy. And they're not ready. He said, and one of the big things, hunting is hunting. Hunting is not an absolute science. A lot of times it's just being in the right place at the right time. And when it's time to shoot, it's time to shoot. It's not time to fiddle fart around on your laptop or your iPad or what have you. And he said, and Roger said, man, I don't know how many animals we've missed because we get on it and I tell the guy, okay, let's go. And he's not ready. He doesn't have his head in the game. You've got to have your head in the game. And the last thing that I'm going to point out, and this is because it's probably one of the most important things that you can do when you go out there, is park your ego. Park it. I don't care if you're the CEO of your business, if you are the big cheese, the grand poobah, you're the number one dude at your company, your business, what have you. When you get on a plane and you fly out to Arizona, New Mexico, Wyoming, whatever, they pick you up and take you out in the mountains, out in the desert. You're no longer the big cheese. Unless you live there, you're a foreigner. And what you need to do is close the mouth and open the ears and listen to what your guide is telling you. Pay attention. These dudes do it for a living. That's what they do, day in, day out, all the time. This ain't their first rodeo, folks. And the worst thing you can do, if you got a guide that you really don't think is up to par, don't argue with him. Go back to the ranch, talk to the outfitter, and say, hey, it's not working out with this guide. I know there's a chance that you could get a guide that's not up to speed. I got that. But the vast majority of the guys that I've encountered have been very solid dudes. They know their stuff. And if you'll close your mouth long enough to listen to them, you might actually accomplish something. You might have some success. And I don't know whether it's just a sign of the times or the fact that men think that just because they were born a man, that they are great shooters and the great white hunter and so forth. Dude, if you work in an office in freaking Scranton, Pennsylvania, and you think you're going to be the man out in the, the highlands of New Mexico, think again. Be quiet, listen to your guide. Now, I'm going to tell you to be quiet, but at the same time, pay attention enough to ask questions, to ask pertinent questions. If you don't understand what the guide wants you to do or expects out of you, don't just make it up. Ask them, say, hey, what exactly should I do? How should I set up? Where should I be? What have you? They'll tell you. That's why they're there. It amazes me, the people that'll book, guided hunts, and then they'll go out there and they'll just completely ignore the advice of their guide. That's like going to an attorney for a legal problem. He tells you what to do, and you're like, you know what? Thanks, but I'm not going to do that. Well, why did you pay the attorney to give you that advice? You could have just saved your money and done it your way anyway. Or going to a doctor or a specialist, and he says, okay, this is what I need you to do. And you're like, you know what? I don't need your advice. I'll do it myself. If you don't want to listen to your guide, then don't book a guided hunt. Go out and do it on your own. There's plenty of places in the world that you can go out and hunt yourself. But the reason you booked a guided hunt is because you want someone, a human being who lives there. That's his ballywick. He knows the area. Pay attention to that man, and he might help you succeed and get that once-in-a-lifetime trophy. But, folks, I tell you what, if you've never it's getting towards the end of summer right now. And by the time you hear this, it might be a little bit late to book a varmint hunt or a prairie dog hunt or what have you. But that's a great thing about prairie dog or varmint hunting is the season is pretty much wide open. Unlike, a lot of big game where it's a very limited season or limited tags or what have you, you can shoot varmints pretty much all year long. I know, when I was living up north in the, the Northeast or North Central, you can hunt groundhogs all the time. Unless there's, something else in season. It's a great opportunity to get to the field, to check your gear, and more importantly, check your own skill. Now we've, in the second half, we talked a lot about fun stuff, about enjoyable shooting, and I'm glad that we did. I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do that because everything doesn't have to be life or death. It doesn't have to be politics. And I know some of you guys out there, you have to get your tissues out and dab your eyes when I start talking about politics because you don't want to think about it. But the world we live in requires your attention. The world that we live in requires that you participate in it. If you don't participate, if you decided, I don't want to hear about that, what happens is people start making decisions for you. And then once those decisions are made for you, you don't have a choice. So if you're going to be a citizen, that's the thing about citizenship is it requires participation. Citizenship requires participation, and it requires that you actually pay attention to what is going on in your community, your state, and the world around you. And right now we've got a story, and this, oh my lords, Jared put it up on the show notes so that and it's
sorry.
It's one of those stories from like, really? Oh. But here, I'll give you the headline. The headline comes from theblaze.com. It says, Feds to investigate high school's Duck Dynasty inspired redneck day over possible racially hostile environment. And what exactly does that mean? Well, according to the story, the United States Department of Education, that's your federal government, the one that you're sending all that money to, said that it plans, this is Dateline July 28th, 2013, that's the it says that it's going to investigate whether or not a redneck day, in quotes, held at an Arizona high school what does it say? It said whether or not it created civil rights violations. Yeah, whether there were civil rights violations and it created a hostile environment. Really? Really? The Redneck Day event at Queen Creek High School took place in May. That's right, over 2 months ago, and was meant to satirize A&E's popular Duck Dynasty series, the Arizona Republic newspaper reported. After one student wore a Confederate flag, a local pastor called the Department of Education to investigate whether racial discrimination was ongoing at the school. Can we just stop ourselves right now? Come on, really? So, first of all, step number one, here's the first thing we have to ask ourselves as reasonable and rational human beings, as citizens of the United States of America. We have to ask ourselves, who should be in charge of the local school district? Where if you have 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 15-year-olds, whatever, you have children in school, who do you think is better able to make decisions for your child's welfare and well-being? The local authorities, the local district, and the parents, or faceless bureaucrats in Washington, D.C.? Yes, I put a lot of sarcasm on that. Why is it that the federal government, all right, number one, are we not broke as a nation? I'm pretty sure that we are. I'm pretty sure that we don't have a budget, that we're spending more money than we're taking in, and we're just running on it. We're writing blank checks on an empty account. So knowing that, we have the federal government, the Department of Education, is going to go down and decide, investigate. They're going to send people, and when they say send people, that means they're going to spend your tax money to investigate a high school to determine whether or not there was a hostile environment created by this. I'll throw this out there. Let's just say that their findings in 2 months or 3 months or whatever their findings are, let's say that they determine that having the Redneck Day inspired by Duck Dynasty at the Arizona high school did in fact create a hostile environment. What are they going to do? Are they going to go around and arrest the children? Are they going to arrest the administrators? Are they going to jail the principal? What are they going to do? And do you not think that if there was an actual problem, if there was an actual issue, if there was a hostile environment being created, that the adults that were on the ground actually at the school when this is going on? So what we're saying is, you adults at the local school district, you're just peons and serfs, and you're not intelligent enough to determine whether or not something wrong or nefarious went on at the school. No. The big brother's going to come down, and we're going to investigate you, and we're going to tell you whether or not we thought you were wrong. How did we come to a point in our nation where the federal government is getting involved in local school politics or local school events? Are you serious? Are you kidding me? Hey, and I know you guys if you don't like to talk about politics, go listen to an ESPN baseball show, and we'll see you guys next week. But ask yourself this, folks, and you're like, oh, well, it happened to that one school district. That's no big deal because that's not where I live. Do you really think that couldn't happen where you live? In West Virginia, we've got a kid, 14-year-old kid, arrested. That's right, removed from the school by police officers for having a picture of a gun on his shirt. That was his violation. If you don't think it can happen where you live, get your head out of the sand, because it can happen. And why is it happening? Well, it's happening because you're all nice and compliant. What? What do you mean nice and compliant? Because what you do is you get on Facebook and you complain about this stuff, but you don't actually do anything. Well, what do you want me to do, Paul? Well, number one, contact your representatives and say, the answer is no. No, you're not allowed to harass our children. We can take care of our children. We can school our children. We elect our local school board officials, okay? We don't need Big Brother coming down here from Washington, D.C. to tell us how to run the Maple School District, all right? You stay in D.C. and screw that city up. Stay out of our city. We don't need you here because nothing good can come from it. Are you not tired of being a serf? Are you not tired of being a servant? Are you not tired of Big Brother coming down? I mean, what are we supposed to think? That the people at, the principal, vice principal, teachers, and so forth at this particular school are so incompetent and stupid that they don't know whether or not an event created a hostile environment? Really? Is that where we're at right now as a nation? Folks, I don't know what to tell you other than, well, number one, I've been saying it for years. If you have your children in a public school system and the school system is abusing your children, taking your little 5-year-old into the office because he brought a Lego gun to school and keeping him there for 2 hours and making him pee his pants, yeah, that happened in America. If you're surprised by that, I don't know what planet you've been living on. My kids haven't been in public school for years. And you say, well, it's not that easy, Paul. No, it is that easy, but it's inconvenient. There is a big difference between not possible and inconvenient. And in America today, we do things or we put up with things because if we did something about it, if we said something, if we stood up, it would make our lives, it would make things inconvenient for us. And we're so wrapped up in what is convenient and what it just allows me to do what I want to do all the time that we put up with garbage like this. So don't tell me it's like moving from a slave state into a free state. Don't tell me you can't do it. You can do it. It would just be uncomfortable or inconvenient for you. And as far as homeschooling goes, this isn't 1954. You don't have to go out and spend $500 and purchase, a full set of the Encyclopedia Britannica and math books and science books and so forth. People, we talk about homeschooling. A lot of my friends at the 4-H shooting sports program, the parents and instructors with 4-H, a good number of them homeschooled their children. And most of the homeschooled children that I've encountered, now Hollywood wants you to think homeschool kids are freaks. Homeschool kids generally are very, very well behaved. They're intelligent children and they succeed. And so this whole, you can't homeschool them because then they'll be, what? They'll be what? What will they be? Tell me. Because if you're going to tell me that they're going to be shut-ins or what have you, that's a bunch of baloney, and you don't know what you're talking about. And it's 2013, folks. You can sign up with a curriculum. You can get into a school program, and your kids can do it right from the computer that they use to play games with every day. So maybe instead of playing games on it, they could actually learn something. So, I thought you guys would want to know, and we'll put the link up to you, that, the federal government's decided they're going to waste your tax money to send people down to Arizona to determine whether or not 2 months ago, when school was in session, whether or not the Redneck Day satire created a hostile environment. And I don't know, I guess maybe we're just rounding people up and putting them in camps because they created a hostile environment. And that's the worst thing in the world that you could possibly do. So you need to be, if you're going to be a citizen, you need to be aware, you need to be engaged, and you need to pay attention to what's going on around you. But we are glad that you are here. We are glad that you are students of the gun and that you listen to our show. If this is your first time, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Check out all of the archives and the previous episodes. We know that there are a lot of different ways that you can listen to this show, a lot of different podcasts and pod galleries and pod thises and pod that's. If you listen to us on iTunes, that's one of the most popular ways to do so. Hey, if you like the show, please go ahead and take a moment to review us or to give us a rating. We would love that. We would appreciate it. And obviously, if you like what we do, like our sponsors, because we couldn't do this for you without the support of folks like Keltec Weapons of Cocoa, Florida, or Crossbreed Holsters of Republic, Missouri. Now remember, you're a beginner once, but you should be a student for life.